Okay, everyone, here we are. We are ready to go. Today, we're going to study. This is part 3 of the discourse that we were learning in the last 2 weeks. We were learning about the various different levels of the Torah, that the Torah has a written Torah and it also has an engraved Torah. So we were talking about the evolution of letters, the difference between the written letters are where the letter and is an entity onto its own. The letter is not one with the substance that's holding the letter. And then there is engraved letters where the letter and the thing in which the letter is holding the letter is one, because you're engraving in the stone itself. There's nothing other than the substance. So we were talking how, in terms of the concept behind it, so why do we find that the Torah is given to us both in a written form, but the more inner dimension of Torah, which is the 10 Commandments, which is like the core of the Torah, which is really the root of all of the Torah, because in the 10 Commandments there are 620 letters, which represent the 620 mitzvot of the Torah, the commandments of the Torah. They're all in an engraved form. God did not give Moshe a written document. He gave him an engraved tablet. So what does that mean? There's a concept behind it. It's a very deep concept. Everything in the physical is a metaphor and expressing the inner content. We find within ourselves that there are 2 types of letters in our human experience. We all function in expressing ourselves through words. Words are made up of letters. So letters flow. And we spoke earlier in the first 2 parts of the discourse that the letters go deeper and deeper and deeper. The farther in you go in the soul, you can still find letters. The most external letters, obviously, is when we write letters. So you can write someone a letter, you can text someone or something like that. So really it's letters that are coming from your thoughts, it's your ideas, it's your words, but you're using a substance outside of you in the course of transmitting those letters. You're using ink from a pen to make the letters. So although those letters are a reflection of your thoughts, but they're still, the letters exist completely outside of you. But then there's letters of speech. Letters of speech is nothing other than you. What is someone hearing? They're hearing your breath. So they're hearing you. It's not like you're utilizing something other than self. However, in terms of the soul, you are utilizing something other than yourself, because you're using the breath of the body. So there's some physical material that's making up the letters. So although we can all understand that when I'm saying, hi, how are you? It's my soul asking you something. But in order for it to be audible to you, I have to put it into breath. I have to create words. And those words have a substance, an existence other than just pure me in those words. And therefore, that too is considered the written. It would be an analogous. Someone corrected me today. I've been saying for years, everybody, I have such holy, silent students that no one corrected me. I've been saying for years, analogous. Someone connected me today that the word is not, the way he corrected me was this person sent me the dictionary, but not when the dictionary talks, the sound dictionary. All he did was just the word I'm wondering, was he sending me the word now? Then I realized, I said today analogous, which I always say, and I find out now it's analogous. My response to him was fake news, fake dictionary. But okay, I learned a new word. I learned how to pronounce it correctly. Okay, so the word is analogous. So it is analogous to written letters, because the concept is you're using substances outside of you to imprint your letters of your soul, your ABC of your soul, of your spirit, and investing it and clothing it into breath. But then we learned there's even a deeper letters. How about thought? When I'm thinking, I'm also thinking words, and words are made up of letters. So when we are thinking, we think words, we think letters. And over there, you will argue, over here, there's nothing other than you. There's no breath there. It's just inside spiritual words. It's your soul. To a certain degree, yes, but we learned in the discourse that even in the soul, the letters of the soul, the letters of the soul, which is the letters of thought, are also already utilizing, because the brain activity and the stuff that is being there, it's not the pure soul itself. There is a material, not a physical material, but a spiritual material. So even in the letters of thought, especially, there's levels in thought, we learned. There's the lower thought called machshava tata'ah, the lower thought, and there's machshava ilah, the higher thought. So the lower thought is in the human experience. There is in the divine experience lower thought and higher thought. There is in the human experience lower thought and higher thought. The lower thought in the human experience is the lower thought in the human experience. Hey, what happened to my cup? Cup. A kois Yeshua. I went there. Thank you so much. Kois Yeshua Sasa. Thank you. So we're going to learn about cups. In the discourse, we're going to learn about cups. Well, there it talks about filling the cups with wine, not with water. But in any case, thank you. So Chaim. So what was I saying? Oh, so the letters of thought, in truth, are not the pure soul. Even the letters of thought, again, even the letters of thought are not pure soul. The letters of thought also use a material that's outside of the soul. Oh, so wait, that's what I was saying. Especially when we're talking about the lower thought. There's higher thought and lower thought, which means you can see within yourself that sometimes you can, it's gewalt, hear this. Sometimes you can hear yourself thinking, which means the words are very, very loud. It's as if you're talking in your head. That's the type of thought usually that you think before you give a speech, before you give a class, or you're thinking what you're going to say on your phone call, or what you're going to say at the meeting, or what you're going to say to the people. So then you're actually talking. It's just that you're not talking with breath, but you're talking in your head. And then you pay a lot of attention to the right words. You hear the words, the letters. That's called the lower thought. And that level of thought, those letters are very close. Those letters are closer to speech. And over there, for sure, there is a subtle material that's not pure you. It's not just your soul. You're utilizing letters. There is some kind, which means the letters are made up of something. As we spoke earlier, baby, brain, what do they call it? What did you call it last time? Neurons, electricity, certain entities that are physical, very subtle physical, that are in that experience. So it might not be breath, a voice, but there's still something other than the pure soul. But then there is very, very deep thought, which is when you're deeply conceiving a concept. Remember, we spoke about this last week. When your brain is firing off a new concept, and then it's just pure light, it's pure brilliance, it's pure like energy. You don't even hear that you're thinking. You don't hear words. You hear a concept. Now, Chassidus, there's an amazing teaching that we learn in all these discourses that there is never a revelation in a human experience that's without words. Every revelation of the soul, every revelation, even the experience of pleasure or anything, has words. Without words, the soul is unable to come into consciousness, into revelation. There's always words. It's just that the higher you go in the soul, the deeper you go into the higher, more brighter, energetic elements of the soul, the more the energy is vast, the more expansive the energy, the letters become very subtle and hardly felt. And therefore, you don't even sense that you have words. It's you're just lost in the energy, no words. So those words already, you can say, are words that are carved out in the soul itself. In other words, what are the words made out of? The words themselves are you. It's not like you're utilizing your words, your letters are being imprinted into a material outside of you. Over here, we would say the words are the words of the intelligence itself, nothing else. It's not an outside word. Like when you're thinking to say it, then you're actually really crunching letters in your head. There's a material there. Now it's not material, it's pure soul. However, we learned in the discourse that even the words that are related to the intellect are also not the real letters of the soul. Because they're, and in some subtle way, even those letters are called letters of the written letter. Why? Because albeit that what? The letters and the intelligence are one, but the Rebbe says something so beautiful. The intelligence itself is something almost added on to you. You're not intelligence. Your soul is not intelligence. Your soul has a power to produce intelligence. Your power has but that's not the essence of the soul itself. So true, the letters and the intelligence on this level are one, but the intelligence is still not you. So it's still like, but then there is levels of the soul that a person can open themselves up to that is deeper than their intelligence. And that is what we call in Hasidus, in Kabbalah, the levels of Keter. Or what he refers to in the Maimer we were learning, Moyach Stima, the intelligence, but the intelligence before it becomes a knowable intelligence. The intelligence as it is still a potential in the soul, as it is still part of the vast, undefined energy of the soul, yet it's the source for intelligence. On those levels, and which we say that in the soul, there is a source for all the 10 powers, for intelligence, for emotions, but it's not yet defined, specified, definitive powers. It's still just that vast, pure, abstract energy of the soul before it gets. But it's not the soul itself, it's the soul as it is already acclimating itself to emanate powers. It's like a medium's level of the soul. It's very high level. In the Ein Sof, it's called Keter. It's before Sefirot, before attributes, but it's already a source for attributes. So this is considered already a revelation of the soul. It's not soul itself. It's a revelation of the soul. So it comes with letters. Every revelation has subtle letters, comes with letters. But these letters are letters that are completely one with the soul. This is what would be considered engraved letters. Because over here, the fact that it is already a source for intelligence and a source for an emotion and a source means that we're talking already about certain design, certain definition. But since the definition over here, it's not that the soul is producing something. It's not producing something. It's just shaping itself into something. That's the difference. It's not producing something. It itself has become something, has become expressed, and every expression has to have some definition in its expression, because you're expressing in a specific flow, in a specific way. These letters are considered engraved letters. So the letters, we have a power, the 22 letters that are the letters really of all languages, because it doesn't make a difference which language. In essence, if you break down all the letters, it's the same sounds. It's part of the makeup of the human soul. And so on the more external level, God enabled our soul to be able to take our letters, of our essential letters, and print them as well, put them into material, whether it's the material of the intelligence, whether it's the material of the thought, of the brain neurons and electricity, whatever that is, or whether it's the material of breath, or whether it's ink. But the common denominator that they all share is that the letter of the soul is producing something other than itself, and that's how we experience the letter. The letter is not the soul itself. However, the letters of the soul itself, there's a level of inwardness, a level of essence, a state of being that is so close to the pure self, to the pure soul itself, before any or the beginnings of revelation, but revelation on such a deep, infinite level. And on those levels, the letters that there are as that make up our letters are just carvings in our soul itself. The 22 carvings that God carved in the human soul, which is the root of all expression and of all letters. That now, just like it is in our experience is just a metaphor for the divine. So in godliness, it also works this way. The way God evolves, the way the energies of the divine evolves as well. Hashem has the Sephirot attributes. See, the Sephirot, we always speak about the 10 attributes, the divine attributes, the divine intelligence, the divine emotions. They are considered substances that God, although they're godly, but they're still substances. And in that sense, they are really fixed and limited. Although the Ein Sof energy flows in them, but they're still a fixed entity. But then there is a level of Keser, as we spoke earlier. The Keter serves as the interface between God himself and the Sphirot and the attributes, which the attributes are the building blocks of the divine infrastructure through which he constructs the world. But this is still a level prior to the attributes, prior to the Sphirot. But because it's already a source for them, it's already shape. But what kind of shape is Keser? Engraved letters. The entire realm of, and he said both levels of Keser. The higher level of Keser, which is facing the Ein Sof, called Atik Yom, the Ancient of Days. And the lower level of Keter, that's called Erech Anpin, the long face, which is facing the worlds, facing creation. Both of them. And obviously, in Erech Anpin, in the long face, which is the lower level of Keter, the letters are far more pronounced. But notwithstanding the fact that these letters are letters, they're both, when we're dealing with Keser, with the level of Keser, the letters of Keser are engraved letters. Not written letters. So, when God communicates Torah to us, which Torah is him, he and the Torah are one. What is Torah made up out of? Torah is made up of words. It's God's words. It's God expressing himself. So when God expresses himself, when we receive it, what are we receiving? Did God express his engraved letters and then clothe it like we do? When I have to speak to someone else, how do I do it? The letters of my soul, the letters of my being eventually emerge outward, enclose themselves in thought, and eventually into speech. And if I want to write it, I'll put it on paper. So then I'm conveying it into something other. God does the same thing. So when he's conveying to us his Torah, on which level are we receiving it? So since we're outside of him, so to speak, we live in creation. So God has to utilize the written Torah to transmit to us. The written Torah means both the physical written Torah, but it also means that even the Torah that it comes in the world of Atzilus, which is the Torah that's the divine intelligence, it's God's thoughts in Atzilus, it's God's brilliant ideas, it's God's Chabad, it's God's Chachma bin Adas, it's God's intelligence, it's God's emotions, which is awesome. But that too is considered to God already. He's dressing himself in letters. Those letters are not him. Now there is that level of Torah. When God gives us the Torah, the Torah we read, the book of the Torah, we're reading it from a written document, written on a parchment, written exactly the way God instructed to write it. It has to contain in it the holiness of the divine. But yet, the letters themselves is already There is some substance other than the Ein Sof. So God is dressing himself in something, but there's something that's called the levush. There's some garment that's not him. That's why the Torah is called the garment. Oita or kasalma. Hashem wraps himself in light. Light is Torah, like a garment. So the Torah is a garment to him. It's not him himself. It's dressed. But that doesn't mean that that's the essence of the Torah. That's the Torah when the Torah comes down in a written form. But when God gave us the Torah, he wanted to give us something so much deeper. He said, I don't want to communicate through words. I don't want to communicate through writing you something. I want to take you, plug you right into my soul, and just, you be me. And you hear my letters as they are me. My essence to essence. That means Hashem gave us the Torah from the level of Keter, where the letters are carvings in him. It's his essence. And that's the greatness of Shavuot we learned in the end. This is what we learned literally in the end of last week. That the reason we had to wait 50 days, Sfira to Omer, or Shavuot was given the Torah, because when God gave us the Torah, he didn't want to give us a written Torah. He wanted to give us an engraved Torah. And that's what he gave Moshe. He gave us the Torah infinitely high. You realize it's infinitely higher. If you're getting the garment or you're getting the substance of the Ein Sof, it's immeasurable, the difference. This is God, the Ein Sof himself, and this is, yes, true. We learned that even the engraved letters are not engraved in God himself. It's engraved in the Or. It's an engravement in the Or of the Ein Sof, but it's still the Or of Ein Sof. It's the light of the Ein Sof. It's not a limited entity. Intelligence, emotions, sphirot, they are already defined entities. It's not the Ein Sof. So we receive by the giving of the Torah both, but on Shavuot is the day of the Hizgalut, the revelation of Keter. That's why it's the 50th day, because 50th is Keser, the level of Jubilee, of Yovel. That's the highest of the high. And that's why on Shavuot, and that's why a Keter is Gematria, what? 620. And therefore Hashem gave us the Aseret Hadibros, the 10 Commandments, which is that 620 letters, because Hashem is communicating engraved letters. And where did he communicate it to? Into us, into our engraved side. But the question is, so now the Mimer is going to deal with that. We realize that only to ourselves can we can only touch our own engraved letters. We can't share that with anybody. We see, even to our conscious self, to share, we can't experience the naked soul, the soul in its infinity, because even to ourselves, the moment it starts trickling into our consciousness, what happens? It dresses itself in intelligence. It dresses itself in emotions that are substance, and definitely it dresses itself in words and thought. And especially when you need to convey something to someone other than yourself, then you really need to put it into a garment. You need to put it into letters of speech or into letters of writing. So how in the world can God communicate with us and give us himself? Give us the Or Ein Sof as it is. Moreover, how can we ever receive that level of Torah? Those carvings are carved in the Ein Sof. So those letters are infinite. How can limited beings rise to receive pure infinity? If it's garbed in a garment, okay. So you got to ask still the question, how can God garb infinity into a garment? That's be a question. But at least there's a garment, and we're receiving it through a garment. But for us to plug in directly and receive the Torah on the level of essence, on these engraved letters where the letters themselves are one with the Ein Sof, on the levels of Keter, how in the world? You see, God couldn't create the world from Keser. Hashem had to create the world of Atzilus with Sfirot, with attributes, which serves as mediators, which serves as intermediaries, so to speak, in order to be able to funnel energy into a finite universe. And that's even for super angels who are super enormous, super expansive, And how about us little tiny schmendricks, little nobodies? How in the world can earthlings of flesh and blood receive the Torah from the level of Keter? That doesn't make any sense. So now we're going to learn over here that we as well, our soul as well, exists on a level of creation, but our souls exist in a level of the divine, and our souls exist in a level of the super divine. And in order to receive the Torah on the level of essence, we need to rise up to our essence, to our transcendent soul, to our soul as it is pre-created. Our soul is, as the Maimer is going to explain, our souls are not creations. Our souls are God, divinity, metamorphosizing into a creation. Souls are not like everything else that's a creation. A soul has a history before it was created. How can you have a history before you were created? You begin at creation. Yes, everything else begins at creation, not the soul. That's why and how do we know that? Every day in our prayers, we speak about our soul existing before it was created. We describe the soul's existence before it ever was a creation. We say, Lekutei, my God, in the morning prayer. When we thank God for our soul, we say, Neshama shenasat, to be the soul that you have given me. Tahira, she's pure. Then we say, Ata barasa, you created her. How can you say that God created your soul? How can you say that the soul is pure before God created it? Wouldn't it make sense to say, Elokai, God, Neshama, my soul, Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yatzarta, you formed it. Ata nafachta bi, you blew it into me. And then after all of that, we should add and say, Tahirahi, she's pure. But we say, no, she's pure, then you created it. And the answer is no. When is the soul pure? What kind of purity are we talking about? We're talking about the soul's purity when the soul was still lodged in the Ein Sof. When the soul was still unified with the Ein Sof. There the soul is not a creation. And we're going to see now it's even than the emanations. It's higher than the Sphirot. The Sphirot are divine emanations. But as we discussed earlier, they are already considered something. Intelligence is something. Souls are rooted in God, higher than Atzilus, higher than the Sphirot, rooted in the Ein Sof, above it all, in Keser. That's what he's going to explain now. And for us to receive the Torah, we need to, and when we study Torah, God wants us to study the Torah in a manner and live our lives, our Jewish life. God wants us to live our engraved letters of our soul. God doesn't want us to, even though God put us in a fixed world and kind of metamorphosized us into creation, he wants us to continuously be able to wiggle ourselves out from our created state, free ourselves, and elevate and transcend our definitions and melt into Ein Sof while we're still in our bodies, not to die doing it, while we're and live from that place. And then we become infinitely enthusiastic, infinitely brilliant, infinitely energetic, and and we love God with an endless passion. Our life is full of light because we're not those fixed letters. Everything in the world is created from fixed letters, but not you, not as a soul. You're rooted in the engravedless, even though you have a shape, but it's a shape of what? It's a shape of a being who's infinite. So it's not stuck in the shape because it's not a fixed entity that he emanated and that's all he emanated. It's him emanating. It's him expressing into. So because you're one with the greater infinity, you're Ein Sof. Hashem wants us continuously every day through prayer. We're going to see it's through prayer that we lift ourselves up into that state. Prayer has the ability every single day to release our soul from its rigidity, from its definitive state, and to open us back up into our infinite origins. What I just gave you over here is a summary of what we're going to learn. And now we're going to learn it inside. So we're holding V'atanavai. We're holding by chapter 4 in the discourse. This is in Lekutei Torah, Pashas Bechuosei, the second mimer, which is an explanation on the first mimer, Daf Mem page 92, Daf Mem Vav Amud Dalet. Okay. Atanova, and now we'll come Biur pasuk to the explanation of the verse. In Bechuosei telechu, if in my statutes you will go. So let's because the verse says let's go back. Now it's important to read the verse. What does the verse say? If in my statutes you will go, that's mitzvosei tishmeru, and my commandments you will observe. Sorry, I'm getting very hot. Okay. So it says, in Bechuosei, if in my mitzvot, if in my statutes you will go, that's mitzvosei tishmeru, and in my mitzvahs my commandments you will observe. Ushamart vasisam oisam, and you will do them. And then God promises a whole bunch of goodies, the reward that's going to be. Now let's see the depth of what does this mean. Let me tell you just quickly the explanation before we get there. God is saying, "Im bechuosei." The word chuosei doesn't only mean statues; it means if in my engraved dimension you will reach. I don't want you to keep my mitzvahs like you're like you're a creature and I'm the creator and we're infinitely million miles apart, light years separated from each other, and you're following certain, divine, godly instructions. God says that's not what it is. In Bechuosei, I want you to dig out, go deep, dig into your soul, open up your consciousness to where you are a divine being. Open yourself up to your hakika. Hakika means where your soul is an engraved engravement in God. That's all you are. And obviously, as a person, as a being, you're a distinguishable being, but not as something separated, but as a shape and form that God carved that is still one with the greater source of. So if you dig that out, then telechu, then you will travel. That means in every mitzvah you will do, you'll experience infinity. Telechu means you will journey. You won't be stuck. You won't be stiff. You'll find constantly new energy, new insight. Imagine every day putting on tefillin and suddenly feeling a gush of meaning, infinite exhilaration. Now, by the way, to do mitzvahs like this, the Alter Rebbe says, so it's one of the reasons I love this mimer. He's going to say, this is going to open up to us when Mashiach is here until the resurrection. It's that period in between. That's when we're going to really, because once we reach the resurrection, we're going to be past mitzvah observance. But the time in between from when Beis Hamikdash is standing and the ultimate observance of mitzvahs is going to be when we will be able to do the mitzvahs on that level of soul. Not as the written word, but as the engraved word. And that has to do with us experiencing that deeper chuosei, the hakika of our soul. But how do you get there? So that's where he's going to explain over here. The mavur la'atan levira pasuk im chuosei telechu. The mavur la'el we explained earlier. The kivan that last ksharin inon. We said earlier that since there are three things that bond together, what are the three things? Israel, the Jewish soul, the Torah, and God. These three are knotted to each other, and therefore we have to see whatever exists in God and in the Torah also exists in the Jewish people, which means these levels. Okay, just like in the Torah, there are the two aforementioned levels. Ksiva, there is the written letters, the Chakika, and there is the engraved letters, which is the written Torah, the Haluchot, and the tablets. Same is true in every spark and in every divine soul. Yesh gam kein beis b'chenes elu. There are these two levels. Oisies achakukim. There are engraved letters. The oisies aksuvim, and there are written letters. So what does that mean? That my soul exists as a written letter, as a fixed entity, and there's a higher self that is still one with the Ein Sof. Although we are a soul, but a soul as it is just an engravement in him. Explains that. Because we say, the soul that you gave me, and we say in the morning, she's pure. And then we say, Ata berasa, you created her. There's no the question. How can we say the soul is pure? Before God created it. I should say God created my soul, and now I should say she's pure. How can I say she's pure before she was created? It should have said the opposite. Ata berasa, you created it. Now, once we have something that exists, we can talk about it, describe it. Tahirahi, she's pure. Chulu. The Inyan Yuvan, and the idea will be understood by Hagdim, by first prefacing Biur Apostle. We'll understand this by first prefacing an explanation of a verse. Gevald. There's a pasuk that says in Joshua, in Sefer Yeshua. Yeshua gives a little speech to the people. Yeshua says to all of the Jewish people. Joshua speaks to the people. So says God, the God of Israel. This is in Joshua chapter 24, verse number 2. On the other side of the river, your fathers lived. Your fathers were living on the other side of the river. Me'olam, forever, they were living on the other side of the river. And then it says, this is one of the verses we say it in Pesach, in the Agadah. I have taken your father, as Avram, Aver from the other side of the river, and I led him through B'chol Eretz Canaan, in the entire land of Canaan. Okay, this is one of the passages of we say in the Agadah right before V'hisha Amda. Okay, we prove from here that in the beginning our forefathers served idols, and then God took them across the river and brought them to the land of Canaan, and He brought them close to monotheism, to Him. Fine. So what does it mean that we lived on the other side of the river? So there is the simple meaning. We were once inhabitants of another land. We lived in Mesopotamia. We were not in Israel, not in the land of Canaan. And then God instructed Abraham, Lech lecha, leave your land and go to the land of Israel, to the land that I will show you. Go to the promised land. And Avram crosses. In order to go there, he had to cross the river, the Euphrates River. That's the simple meaning. But the Alter Rebbe says, it seems like, and he asks a question, the Zohar asks this question from the Zohar. What's the question? It seems like he's coming to tell you a big novelty. God is telling you, you should know, you might have not known this. God is telling us that you weren't natives in this land. You came from the other land. I brought you to the land. Okay, everybody knows that. Anybody knows a bit of Jewish history knows that we have come from Abraham. Abraham didn't live in the land of Israel. He journeyed over here. What's this big? Yeshua is gathering the people. And it's almost he's saying that I'm not giving you information that I could have known. I'm giving you information because I'm a prophet. I'm telling you what God said. God is telling you that God brought you from the land, from over there, brought you to the land of Israel. As if this is information that is unknown to us. And the answer is it is. Because when we understand the deeper meaning, only God can reveal this. Because the other side of the river doesn't mean the Euphrates River. The other side of the river means above and beyond what separates between creation and creator, between all the words and the Ein Sof, there is a river. The river is the river of flow of energy that flows into the cosmos, into the universes to create it. Every creature and every being begins in that river. Because in order to exist, you need God to flow his energy into you. That's the river that goes out of Eden. That's the source of life. For all of creation, all the myriads of creatures. But God tells to the Jewish people, I want you to know you're different than everybody else. Your fathers, your souls of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're not They're not products of creation. They didn't pop up on downstream. They didn't begin from the river. You are on the other side of the river. You are a primordial being. You exist before everything, before creation. You're not part of time and space. You have no beginning. You're etched in the Ein Sof. You're on the other side. You're an infinite being. Who can tell us that? You see, once we came into creation, we don't know that we existed pre-creation. We traveled into a whole new existence. We're kind of completely metamorphosized. Does a butterfly know that they were once a caterpillar? Probably not. Wouldn't even occur to them. And over there, the change is not even so big. Because after all, this is a creation. This is a physical creation. This is an insect. That's an insect. Fine, this can fly. But yet it wouldn't know it. How in the world are we to know that we exist as God, as one with God? That's what Yeshua is telling them. Be'ever anor, on the other side of the river, Yoshua v'seichem. You come from above and beyond. And I planted you in the world because of a certain thing you need to do for me in this world. I put you into creation, but you're not of creation. Gewalt. Let's read it over here. The Zohar asks the question, what is this teaching us? We turn over the page. What is this coming to teach us? Do all the Jewish people not know this? And from the way the verse is phrased near it implies, this is some great news. Even to Joshua, so you need that God should say it to him. The Zohar answers, I love these words in the mimer. This is such a good mimer. I fall in love with all of them, but right now I'm in love with this one. The Navi, the prophet, spoke something very great. He's saying something really, really gewalt. He's saying something awesome. He's notifying us. This is the concept. What it's saying over here is the concept of which the Zohar, it says in the Midrash, Yisrael alu b'machshava, that Israel arose in God's thoughts. The Midrash is saying that what existed. What was the first things? Before God created the world, what was? So it says that Israel arose in God's thoughts before creation. So what does that mean? Before creation means that we exist before creation. But then we exist in his thought. We exist as part of him. But deeper than that, thought we discussed earlier is already external. We discussed earlier. It's already considered. Already picking up substance that is not pure soul, pure essence. But when it says arose in thought, means thought where thought is in its highest state, where thought is in its, that's the preconscious thought. That's the thoughts that are like this, the very, 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 the thoughts that are like just the beginning of revelation of the essence of the soul. It's a thought that's so subtle, so high that we don't hear it, but it's there. It's the Keter level. That's the meaning souls. And when we say that Israel rose in thought, which means we are embedded in that thought. The intention is their root is drawn. Their root is taken from the concealed machshava, from the concealed thought. The erech anpin. Erech Anpin is Keter, the level that's higher than Chabad. It's higher than the revealed divine intelligence, the Sfirot of Atzilus. We say, but regarding Chachma of Atzilus, we say Chachma me'ayin timatzei. Chachma is considered something. It comes from nothingness. Ketzer is that nothingness. Chachma has no knowledge. The intelligence cannot know this level. Remember we spoke last week. When Moshe Rabbeinu saw Rabbi Akiva and what they did to him, and Moshe was so baffled by the greatness of Rabbi Akiva, and he couldn't, and he said to God, "This is the Torah, this is the reward," because Rabbi Akiva was tortured to death. And God says, "Don't try to figure it out with intelligence. because even my own intelligence can't conceive what's going on over here. This is infinitely deeper than intelligence. This is in the pre-intelligence, a place that produces all intelligence, but is above all intelligence. And that's where this action, this event cannot be explained from a lower level in the system. It won't make any sense anywhere because it's rooted in this deep, deep, essential place. That's called Olu b'machshava. That's where all of our souls really are rooted in. And that reason you can probably say about the Jewish story as a whole. Think about it. Just like the story of Rabbi Akiva doesn't make any sense. The story of Israel doesn't make any sense. October 7th doesn't make any sense. The Holocaust doesn't make any sense. Everything we've been through doesn't make any sense. God's conduct with us is not from a place of reason. It's from a place that's much infinitely deeper than reason and explanation. But that's because we're so real. That's because we're so deep. That's because we're so divine. We're so infinite. So it's not comprehensible because it's above comprehension. Of course, we say it should come down in a revealed way, but what we really should realize is that it's a compliment, although it's so harsh. But it's because it's so deep, and we were told that it's not going to go on forever in its with its darkness. It's going to become bright, which means it's going to become a revealed good. But in any case, that's the meaning when we say that Yisrael is rooted in machshava stima, in the closed thought that is unknowable. The erech anpin of the level of keser, it's not above. It's above the regular machshava ilah, the higher thought, which is the thoughts of bina. The thought of bina is called machshava ilah, the higher. Vitata, the thought of malchus. Remember, we learned the level of Leah. Leah is called the thought of malchus. Rachel is speech. Leah is thought, but she's the thought that precedes speech. So that's called the lower thought. And then there is bina, which is higher thought. But that's all conscious thought. And then that's the thought of the intelligence, which we discussed earlier, is also called written letters. It's not the letters of the essence. The lower thought, is your thinking what you're going to speak. And the higher thought, is the thought of the intelligence, which is higher than thinking what I'm going to say. Remember, we spoke earlier. When you think what you're going to say, the words are far more defined. You can hear yourself talking. And it's also hard, you find that once you prepared a certain speech, then you're kind of limited to those words. It's very hard. Before you prepared it already, you can say the same thing in many different words. But once you kind of already prepared it, no one wants to change it because it's already fixed. It becomes limited already. Because now it's already, unless you're really, really, really a comfortable speaker, and you're comfortable, and therefore you can have a speech prepared, a full speech prepared, and then you can take a look at the audience, and you can rearrange it all and be totally, but you have to be very comfortable. If you're not comfortable, if you're a little tense and a little nervous, you really have to follow the script. All right? Because it's a place where you're operating from. The thought, once the thought precedes the speech, it becomes very limited. The higher you go in thought, okay, is the thought of seichel, the letters are less pronounced. That's why we know that a lot of times you can think the same idea but use different words. Because on this level, the letters are not so fixed. They're interchangeable. They're free. There's far more fluidity amongst the letters, right? And also the letter, and you don't even feel the letters. And all of this is an analogous. Woo! 2 times already said it right. From the 10 spheres of the world of Atzilus. Now, the 10 attributes of the world of emanation. Even the higher thought, which is the level of bina, which is called the river, it goes out, it flows from Eden. Eden is chachma, and the river is bina, but it's already a flow of divine energy that is already fixed. God already downloaded something for the creation. It's already a download. It already left him and moved to the creation. That's the point. It's a file that it was already transmitted. And that's why first it's a flash, and then from that, which is the chachma, and then from that flows a river. That flash opens up, and there's enough energy there to sustain all of creation and everything that's there. But it's ki hamachshava ein enocha. Now, why is it called a river? Because just like a river is moving, if water is standing in one place, not a river, it's a lake. When is it a river? It's moving. And it moves. So that's the same way with thought. The flow of consciousness doesn't stop. It's always thinking. It's moving. Just like the river is always flowing. And where is it coming from? It's coming from Eden, which is the higher chachma. The higher chachma is the most potent the most potent godly revelation. In the power of chachma is the design, is the kernel, it's the seed for everything that will exist in all of the cosmos. And the river is opening that up, opening that thing, and the thoughts that flow, the constant energy that's produced by that one idea. It's like a person has an idea, and then they give a speech for 2 hours, like with that idea. They're rolling with it, they're talking. And the thoughts keep on like building more on the idea. But it's all coming from that initial inspiration, from that initial thought. So the inspiration, the initial flash is the chachma, that's the Eden. And then the thoughts, that's the river. What does it mean it rises in thought? That's regular thought. We say Israel comes arose in thought. That's the hidden chachma, the concealed wisdom, the erech anpin of keter, of the long face, which means the Ein Sof, the keser light, that's a preparation for the world. Which is above from the supernal chachma of the world of Atzilus. As we discussed earlier, like we explained earlier when it says, be silent, when God tells Rabbi Akiva. So it arose in thought. That means it's not downloadable. This is in my in levels that are beyond the entire flow of energy even to myself, so to speak, even to the divine revealed self. It's higher than that. The Imkain and Amram Zal, and therefore when the sages say, Olu b'machshava, they rose in thought, Hainu sheshayrish nishmasam, the root of the souls of Israel. Mushrash is rooted, v'nimshach, and it is drawn, b'pchenes machshava stima, from the concealed thought, the erech anpin of the crown, shalamayla machachma ubina da'atzilus, which is above the chachma and the bina of Atzilus, the wisdom and the understanding, the faculties, the attributes of Atzilus, which is already a world, and therefore the sphirot, those attributes are already something other than the Ein Sof, This is why God is notifying us. God is giving us very important information. We would never know this, as we said earlier. We are from the other side of the river. This means to say that our root is drawn from a level that's above the river. It goes out from Eden. All of creation comes only from the Eden, which later turns into a river that flows all the way into the garden. And from there, the 4 rivers come out, like it describes in Genesis and Bereshit. And from there is where creation happens. But then the Jewish souls are rooted in pre-Eden on the other side. Kipirish be'ever asheni on the other side. So according to, it's amazing. It's the total opposite than we would think. The way we always thought is that God says, I transported you to the land of Israel. So that means he brought us from the other side of the river, which is inferior, Mesopotamia. It's not holy. It's a dark place, steeped in idolatry and paganism. I rescued you from that dark place, and I brought you over to the land, to the promised land. So I upgraded you. Now we learn it's the opposite, according to the deeper meaning. Nah, you were in a much higher place. You were rooted on the other side of the river. You come from the Ein Sof. You're above the whole, and I downgraded you. I put you into the world, but that's because of an upgrade, because of something you will do for me in creation. But the actual experience is one of descent. I put you into the world, but you're much bigger than who you think you are. You're infinitely bigger than than you experience yourself. And it's frustrating to him that we always think of ourselves as so small and so insignificant, when only God knows how infinitely powerful we are. And he begs us. Basically, what it says in Bechuosei is Hashem begging. You know what it is? Hashem is begging the little eaglet to test its wings. You're not, because it's like the famous story of the eagle that ended up in the chicken coop, was adopted by a chicken. It was forsaken by the parent, and it always thought it's a chicken. Till one day it was in the end of the cliff and it was stuck on something. It had no choice, and someone needed to get away. It opened its wings and took a leap, and suddenly it's soaring like an eagle. And I realized it's not a chicken in a chicken coop. It's really an eagle. So God basically is saying, you're not a chicken. I put you in a chicken coop, but you're not a chicken. You're an eagle. You're the king of all birds. You're above the whole creation. You're a divine being. Test your wings. In Bechuosei. Open yourself up to your... When I put you in the world, I didn't mean for you to think of yourself like a worldly creature. You have to be here to appear this way, so you can be part of society and influence from within. But your energy is really energy from above and beyond. That's why you have the power to transform the whole world and make the whole world godly. On the other side, when you cross the river, what's on the other side of this river? On the other side of the river, Sham Yashu Avosechem, that's where your fathers come from. What does that mean? What's above the river? Keser is above the river. Erech Anpin, the long face, which is meaning long over here means infinite. The Sfirot, when they're still embedded in the Ein Sof, they haven't yet emerged as Sefirot, identifiable, objective Sfirot. They're still one with the Ein Sof potential. At best, they are letters, but they're carved letters. Erech Anpin Atzilus, they're above Atzilus. Why is that called the other side? Because we know there is a partition that separates between the level of Keser and Atzilus. And you're on the other side of that partition. There is a partition that separates between it and Atzilus. From the other side of the partition, that's where our forefathers are rooted. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their souls were plucked from there. And being that we're their children, we are also included in them. And we have their DNA, their spiritual DNA, their divine DNA inside each and every one of us. The Inyan and the idea is, now he explains, Ki Yadua, it is known to Avram, Yitzchak, the Yaakov, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and B'chinas Chagas. We know that our forefathers correspond to the three energies. We spoke about it in the new podcast today called the Lekutei podcast, which we started. So in that podcast, we spoke that there are three columns. Chesed, the right column. Also, by the way, I'm selling this to the YouTube crowd, which maybe haven't gotten this information. We started a new podcast, daily podcast. It's a half an hour class. It's called the Lekutei podcast, which means the divinity podcast. And we're studying a very, very deep discourse, which we're going to be doing for about 30 years. But we do every day a half an hour. You can look it up on Apple, what is it called? Apple Music or Apple, and on Spotify and on all of them. You can put my name in, or you can put in Elokus, spelled Elokus. And that's where we have already 2 episodes up. It's a good thing to have. In any case, Vinny, just a little shot of Chassidus every day. The Inyan, it is known, Ki Yadu, it is known, that Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh, and B'chinas Chagas. So we know that they are the three channels. God's the setup of the entire flow of energy into the creation comes through three channels: kindness, which is revelation, severity, gevura, might, and strength, which is constriction, or the opposite of revelation, withdrawal, and then there is Tiferes, which is the balance in between, the mix. So we know that Abraham is the man of kindness, Avram. He personified, he was a human being with a soul that personified the divine energy of kindness. Isaac personified the attribute of gevura, of might, and Jacob personifies balanced energy. He was between the two Tiferes. So if that's the case, they're very high because these attributes are divine attributes. So by saying that the forefathers are the divine attributes, that's already a super compliment. They are rooted in Atzilus. They're rooted in the divine. But Atzilus, let's understand something. Atzilus, although it's divine, it's the divine map of creation. It's God already conditioning himself to become a source for creation. It's already a world. It's already something that's unified with God, but it's still already something. It's not a something that's creation. It's a lot to explain the difference between something that's creation. We're going to be learning about it in the podcast in a few days. Something that's creation and something that's something but not creation, but it's still something. So when we say the forefathers come from Atzilus, from Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, that's very high in the divine, but it still is. But here he says that's the known side of our forefathers. That's their revealed side. Their hidden side is on the other side of the river, infinitely higher. Above our forefathers, really where they originate is in godliness that is literally infinite. It's above and beyond any connection to the creation. It is Ein Sof, completely Ein Sof. And there too, they are these three energies. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, three energies. But over there, they are not emotions, the divine emotions. They are the super emotions. They are the emotions that are rooted in will. In a human being, the will is still the pure soul. And there's a level of emotion, which he's going to explain now, that is not a limited, narrow experience of emotion, but rather emotion as it is completely still one with the soul itself, a much higher transcendental level of emotion. That's the real source of the forefathers, as he's going to explain. Their real source is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, but the Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes of Keter. I didn't want to max you out, Max, but we're saving it on the recording for you. So what are they? Sharsham, their roots. Oh, now watch this. Emotions, you got to hear this, Kavald. Emotions are called mountains. That's why our forefathers are called the mountains. We're going to learn about it in a few weeks when Bilam is going to want to utter curses and blessings are going to come out. He says to the king Balak, he says, I see them, Meirosh Tzurim, I see them from the mountaintops. And that means I see them from their beginning, they're rooted in the big mountains. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are three ginormous mountains because they're rooted in these powerful forces of Atzilus. But there's two types. The Zohar mentions, you got to hear this. The Zohar mentions that there's two levels of mountains. There are white-capped mountains, and then there are mountains of darkness. The mountains of light and mountains of darkness. Mountains of light means even though it's super powerful energies, but they're revealed. Revealed to who? They're more already God revealing these energies. There's his emotions that he projects, and they become emotional force. They become a specific energy of kindness. If it's God's kindness, it's a mountain of kindness. It's a super energy. But yet, since it's a fixed energy of kindness, it's already defined as kindness. It's like the letters that have become fixed as something. Same as the Gevura, the might. It's a fixed attribute other than him himself. They're called the mountains of light. But then there's the mountains of darkness. These are the super conscious emotions in God himself, rooted, embedded in God's inner soul, so to speak, in the Ein Sof itself. Mountains of darkness. The mountains my son is going to have in Fairbanks, Alaska. The mountains of darkness. Oh, those mountains. I'm sure next year in the summer we'll do a trip to the mountains of darkness in Fairbanks. We're going to go catch some salmon over there in the mountains of darkness. These are the mountains of light. The Torah Chashucha and the mountains of darkness. Haniska bezoar that are mentioned in the Zohar. The Haina, what does that mean? Chagas ta'atzilus, the Chesed Gevura Teferes, the kindness, the strength of and the beauty of Atzilus. Nikra Torah and Ohira, they're called mountains of light. And let's translate into our human experience. Our human experience, these two levels of emotion are as follows. One level of emotion is an emotion that takes place on our more external level of consciousness and experience, which is a feeling that we produce, an excitement that is produced, an emotion that is an excitement that is produced as a result of our intelligence. Our mind understands, perceives something beautiful, something wonderful, something worth getting excited about, and we get excited. So even when you're excited, does that mean your essence is completely attached to it? You're excited. How many things throughout the day do we see that we get excited? Some things we get a tiny little bit excited about. Some things we get a little more attached to. Something we get a lot attached to, depending on the level. Today, an event happened that I realized was getting me too excited, and I was upset that it was getting to me. So it was affecting me so much, and I was saying, I shouldn't be affected. Why am I so caught up in this? So I put my phone away. I shut it. I said, I shouldn't be excited. And I realized that there's a piece of me that got like entangled, like invested in this. I shouldn't. But you see that certain things, the question is, how deep did you get entangled in something? But the excitements that we usually get are what? What are our excitements? Our mind perceives, we get excited. And the proof is that it's not your essence, because this week, sometimes you're into, you meet people, they're into something, they don't stop talking about it. You meet them 5 years later, they're not in that business. They're not trying to sell it to you anymore. They're not talking about it. They're telling you to drink this every day. Some people, they get, you must drink the shake every day. But every time you meet them for they don't stop. The vitamin, that this, that, but everybody has their shigas, And then, if 2 years, 3 years later, they forgot even that they were into it, which means it's an excitement, but it's happening on a outer level of their existence. It's an emotion triggered by an awareness or a understanding, something coming through our intelligence and our understanding, creating these emotions. So it's on the outer level of our soul. But then there are core emotions that are rooted deep, deep, deep. Our connection to our children, our connection to our parents, our connection to our siblings, like deep things, certain elements that are rooted in the subconscious. They're not. Now, you love your sister, you love your brother. Doesn't mean that a lot of times these deep loves and these deep emotions remain dark mountains in your subconscious. And unless you think about it, unless you meditate or have a reason to bring it out, it will remain these subconscious mountains. It wakes up, if God forbid, your sibling is in trouble and something happened to them, then you suddenly realize how much you loved them and how much you cared about them. You might not have realized it when everything was good, because nothing shook you. Right? You weren't shooken by that to the core. But what you see from here is these deep, powerful mountain terrains that are much deeper in our soul. Even they reveal themselves to us through the intelligence, through the mind, but the mind is not the source of these excitements. The mind is only a trigger of the consciousness to focus us on what we essentially have. It's a different type of thing. There's certain things that the mind itself produced that's excitement. It doesn't go deeper than our mind. It's produced by the mind. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Someone said someone is by the door. We got that. No. Yeah. Okay, so this is the idea. So this is the difference between these two levels of mountains, the mountains of light and the mountains of darkness. So when we say that Avram is God's kindness, and Yitzchak is God's severity, and Yaakov is God's Tiferes, which is God's compassion, is it the external emotions of God stemming from God? God says, "Oh, I made a world. It's nice to be kind to the world. It's nice to, I have to be disciplining, because or else God's mind is telling him if he doesn't discipline, the world will go. There will be total chaos. So I got to do that. So it's like produced by Hashem's mind. Is that, or do we say when we say the forefathers are rooted in God's emotions, what he's saying is the more essential emotions, infinitely deeper than the external level. And that's why our relationship with God as well, when we serve God with our Abraham, which means with our love, with our Isaac, and with our Jacob, that means we evoke these emotions inside of us. Of course, in the beginning, when we start exercising our spiritual juices, when we start to open up our soul to a higher consciousness, we have to start on an external level. We have to start getting excited about God like we get excited about any other subject. We have to start with stimulating our mind, studying and learning, meditating, and then creating excitements. But that's not the intention. It's not supposed to stay on this external level. What's supposed to happen is at a certain point, the deeper soul is supposed to open up. And suddenly we're supposed to experience the mountains of darkness in our soul, which are essential love to God. The love emanating from our essence, the fear and awe emanating from our essence, the compassion for our own lowliness that we feel in our essence on a deep, that's the idea of it. It's the mountains of darkness. And that's because our soul originates in the essence of God, and it's connected to God on that level. So God has these, so to speak, what we say, mountains of darkness, and corresponding to that, the soul's mountains of darkness. Our love and fear of God on the levels of essence. But again, we're not always there. Actually, most of the time, our deeper selves are hidden from us. And we operate, if we're lucky, on the external level of godliness. Sadly, so much of our times we get excited about silly things that are completely not important. The worldly things. If we're, take some time, we meditate, we think deeper, we get to our emotions. Which level of emotion? So the intention that God wants us to get to is to open up the real source of our forefathers, the other side of the river, where the emotions are our essence, an essential love, an essential fear, not a excitement that came because I read something nice and I understood something, I got excited. That's nice, but that's superficial. It lasts today, tomorrow it's gone. Open yourself up much deeper. That's what we're learning. The external emotions are the emotions that come from the intelligence and from the contemplation. Through the intelligence and the contemplation, this produces love or fear. But there's a much greater love that transcends the intelligence. They're called mountains of darkness. These are the emotions haklulim that are contained and part of baharatzain shalamayla ma'aseichel, in the will that is beyond intelligence, in the essential will of the soul. Similar to what God says. You're asking me a question on Rabbi Akiva. I'm telling you, this is the way it is from my essence, even though you can't understand. It is. And this is also when God took us out of Egypt, we understand that God activated his emotions. He was kind to the Jewish people. He was harsh to the Egyptians. And he had compassion. So God's emotions were in full play. Which level of emotions was it? Was it God from a place where he's kind of like cool and collected, from a pure, intelligent place, looking at what's going on in the world, seeing the injustices, and working himself up to being upset? That too could be very energetic. It's God's emotions. It's not little emotions. God can really, or God suddenly is moved by what he sees, through his intelligence. He's looking at the world, sees the suffering, sees the injustice, and he has tremendous compassion. He's moved to compassion. But it's like a person feeling compassion for a stranger. So you feel the compassion because you've been watching suffering. So you feel the compassion. But it's not your essence. It's an external thing. Is that what happened? He's going to say no. When God got excited by Egypt and came down and took us out of it with his three powers of Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, it was a revelation of his infinite emotions. His emotions where they are one with him. It wasn't from his mind. It was infinitely beyond his mind. There was madness in that. And that's, where do we see that? It mentions three hands that God used when he took us out of Egypt. Yad HaGedola, the great hand, as it says, Ubnei Yisrael, Vayar Yisrael, say Yad HaGedola, the people saw the great hand, the great arm of God. Then it says, Biyot Chazaka, with a mighty hand, he will take them out. That's the Gevura. Yad HaGedola, that's the Chesed. Biyot Chazaka, and then there's another one, Ubnei Yisrael Yotzim, the Jewish people went out, Biyad Ramah, with an exalted arm. All those three hands are the arms of Keter. Those are the midot, those are the attributes, but not the attributes in Atzilus. Those are the attributes of the Ein Sof. These are essential attributes. They're the carvings in the Ein Sof, like engraved letters. This is not an external relationship. The conduct of the world is external, but the conduct with the Jewish people is not. See, there's this differentiation has to be made. The conduct with the world is through the interface of the emotions. And the emotions are through the intelligence and the emotions. Emotions that are produced through the mind. It's through the fixed intelligence and the fixed emotions. Yes, it fluctuates, it changes based on what's going on, so on and so on. Like a person changing, like a person's attitudes change towards their neighbor and towards their acquaintance, to their coworker, and things like that. But when it comes to your own children, it's much deeper than that. It's the essential emotions. And that's the Yad Chazaka. This is the idea of the three arms. Yad HaGedola, the great arm. Yad HaChazaka, the mighty arm. Yad HaRama, and the exalted arm. As it is known, Chesed u'Gevura, the Erech Anpin, as it is known that the Chesed and the Gevura element of Keter, of the long face, Mislapshim, they becoming clothed, Ba'abba ve'ima, in Chachma and Bina, Umehem nimshach achakach bechagas tatzis. Let's understand something. Of course, the higher emotions are so deep and so high that they don't reveal themselves in their place. For us to be conscious of them, they come through the mind. In other words, when we feel the love to our children, it's also taking place on the external self. But it's not starting in the external self. Something so much deeper is flowing into them. That's what he's saying. It's the two arms of Keter that are now pushing the mind to think this way, which is then creating the more expressed emotions. But what's the underlying force behind it? The mountains of darkness, not the mountains of light. That's the motivator. That's the bedrock of what's going on over here. Now these midos, the emotions that are beyond the intelligence, over there they're not so differentiated. Because again, in the inner soul, all you have is pure soul. So you don't really know the differences of chesed, gevurah, teferet are very, very subtle. They hardly exist because it's still this, it's as we said, it's the soul itself. It's not something other than the soul. So there, the chesed, gevurah, teferet, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are not noticeable there. Avram is Yitzchak and Yaakov on that level. They're all one, even though they're really three, but they're hardly noticed as three. They're all embedded in the Ein Sof. In Atzilus, since we're becoming more outward, each emotion is in its own place. It can now, we said earlier that in Keser, Ein Shayach es Chalkos Adayin. There is no division yet in Keser. I took your father from the other side. Who's your father? Avram, but it's not only Avram. It contains Isaac and Jacob. See, that's what I think he's emphasizing it. Because when you're taking Abraham, you're taking all three of them. Avram, and what did I do with him? I brought him from the other side of the river, and I manifested him onto the other river bank, which means onto the side of creation. I brought him from above Atzilus, from the Keter, and I brought him more into a manifest state, where the chesed is chesed and the gevurah is gevurah. And then eventually I took Isaac, Jacob, and Yaakov, and I lowered them into the physical, into the creation realm completely. And eventually they became down as human beings in this world. And of course, when they're human beings in human bodies, they're for sure limited and fixed. But what are they really? What's their energy? Their energy is from beyond the river. Piddush. And what does it mean, Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan? Hu ha-malchus ta'atzilus. The malchut element is called land. So God says, I plucked them from the Ein Sof. I transmitted them into Atzilus. But when we say that Hashem brought them into Atzilus, He brought them through the entire order of Atzilus. He brought them, first funnels them through Chachma and Bina, the intellectual faculties, into the emotions, and eventually all the way down into Malchus. Because in Malchus, they become already conditioned to become creations. That very same Avram suddenly formed, becomes an neshama in the world of Bria, and then eventually he makes his way down into this world. So I brought them all the way through the land, but Be'eretz Canaan means Hashem feeds them through the entire order of Atzilus, of the world of emanation, and then finally, they're born into creation. Eretz Canaan wa Malchus d'Atzilus. And why is it called Canaan? Loshen Tagar v'Seicher. Canaan means a merchant. And Malchut, the Shekhinah, is called a merchant. Because that's the place that Hashem buys and sells. He's doing business. That's the place where godliness gets transmitted to creation, and creation elevates sparks of holiness, and they get elevated into godliness, like we discussed in different places. It's not the topic of the Maimer, so I'm not going to get into it. But Malchus is the business area where all transactions happen between the divine and the creation. The Lashon Hachna, it's also the word Canaan also comes from the word Hachna, which means submission. because to a king there is submission. Explain it elsewhere why Malchus is called Canaan. Now what's the intention? Hashem drew the forefathers from their root on the other side of the river. Later they should descend lamata below, and they should come down through the entire world of Atzilus, the Hainu Canal. What does that mean? Shachagat the Erech Anpin, the Chesed Gvurit Teferes of Erech Anpin, Mislapshim becoming clothed, Ba'aba ve'ima and father and mother, which is Chachma and Bina, Umisham, and from Chachma and Bina, Bizun, they go into Zuchra and Nukva, into male and female, which means into the 6 emotional attributes, and eventually into Malchus. Adam Malchus until Malchus. Kedei, and what's the point? Lehislabesh, to create them, to take the eagle and make it into a chicken. Kedei lehislabesh bibiyah, so that these souls can then later become enclosed in the 3 lower worlds, which is creation, formation, and completion, which is our physical world. Begufim, in bodies, ba'olam hazeh, in this world. Now we'll understand, we're talking so much, and whoever's listening to the Mashiach Maimer, over there we discussed how tremendous of a fall it is that God took the neshama and made it into a soul. You get a little bit of an idea that the souls get drawn down from such loftiness all the way down. And what's the point? Levader, and what's the point? That we should do something here. What are we supposed to do? To rectify the world. Levader birude reish peches, to elevate the sparks of the 288 sparks, nitzutzin of sparks, shenaflu lebiyah, that they fell to the 3 lower worlds. The Yerida Zutzayda Chaliyahu, and this descent is for the sake of an ascent. Because eventually, through the souls elevating these sparks, the souls then gain even higher. That the 288 sparks should be elevated to their root and their source, which is in the world of Tohu, which is even higher than these levels that we're talking about. But and how is it going to be done? How is it achieved? God really sends down Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We, their offspring, are all their energies multiplied 1 billion times. But it's the same energies. So how is this elevation going to take place? Avram is going to do it. Abraham is going to do it through kindness. Isaac is going to do it through fear and awe. And Jacob is going to do it through compassion. It's through the various different, and all of the Torah and the mitzvot and all of our observances and all of our experiences are all holy experiences, all on one of these channels. Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. They b'chinas Ava, the Yitzchak b'chinas Yira, and Yitzchak in fear, the Yaakov b'chinas Rachmanis, and Yaakov in a manner of mercy. The Zehu Inya. Now we're coming to the explanation of the verse, and this is the meaning. Im bechuosei telechu. If in my statutes you will go. What does that mean? What God is saying to us in this Torah, God is saying, when you're doing mitzvot and when you're learning Torah and you're observing my commandments, I want you to unlock the journey element in you. I want you to metamorphosize back into an eagle. I want you to come into contact with your truest self as you are above all of existence and do the mitzvah from that place. So then telechu, you're experiencing the infinite in the Torah. Why? I want you to do the mitzvot, the engraved mitzvot of the luchot. I don't want you to do the mitzvot. You can do the mitzvahs as a cold document of, what do we mean by that? Let me translate in the simple words. A person can do mitzvahs very much from the consciousness that I'm a creation, I'm seeking my well-being, and if I follow God's mitzvot, I'm going to do well in my life, I'm going to gain, I'm going to make money, God is going to be kind to me, I'm going to live a healthy life, and if anything, if I don't get my reward here, I'll get my reward in the world to come. But that's a very limited experience. It's nothing. There's nothing personal. There's nothing warm between you and God. It's all calculated math, and that's what it is. But no one will have any complaints against you. You're going to come up after 120. They're going to bring the angels going to come with the clipboard. Today's days they have much better than clipboard. They used to have a clipboard, and angel would come with the pencil in his ear, and he would open it up, and you had to check off all those questions like sometimes they give you by a doctor when you come in the film. But today's days they already have everything electronically. So you come there and then it goes through. So they're going to go through all your observances and you can say, check, 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 check. Go to Gan Eden. Go to the garden. Okay, fine. And it's great. It's wonderful. But it's not Teilechu. God doesn't want that kind of observance. God says that's not the real story. It's a very superficial external. That's the level of written letters. Everything is on the outside world, not in the inside world. Chukoisai. I want you to get to the engraved letters of Torah mitzvahs. I want you to get to my engravements. I want you to be engraved, and I want you to open up the mitzvahs on the level of engravement. And then Teilechu. Then nothing is fixed and everything is infinite. Because a carving in the infinite, when there's nothing else added but the infinite is infinite. Although it's a carving. But it's carved of the infinite. And therefore over there you can go endlessly. You can feel in the tefillin infinite light and infinite meaning. And continuously. What the Alter Rebbe is demanding over here is that we never feel satisfied. That we always feel trapped. As much as we gain, we always have this energy. I want more. I want to get more out of this tefillin. I want to get more out of this mimer. I want to get more out of this pasuk chumash. It's like this. That's what the Alter Rebbe was looking for. He was trying to induce in us that we should feel this. That everything we're doing is infinity. There's boundlessness. There's always more. It's Ein Sof. That's when you're traveling, you're going from the bottom up. Now, Abraham and Isaac are rooted also in the Ein Sof, but the most powerful one connected to the Ein Sof is Jacob, Yaakov. Because Tiferet, in particularly, the middle branch, goes up to Keter. If you look at the branches, you see the right side, although it also links up to Keser, it's not directly plugged into Keser. The left side. The middle, why? Because what's Keser? Keser, the energies are not defined yet. It's still simple. And then what did we say is in Keser? Chesed and Gevurah, everything is one over there. Where do you see in the midot, in which one midah do you see the undefinedness, the abstraction of Keser? In Tiferes. Because the fact that Tiferes can harmonize chesed and gevura, kindness and severity, is because it has a flavor of the Ein Sof. It has a transcendental flavor. Keser has an energy of Ein Sof. Tiferes has an energy of Ein Sof. And therefore, in Tiferes, there is a feeling of Ein Sofishkeit, if you can say. Right? You can feel the Ein Sof in Tiferes more than in the others. And that's why simply by us, we will also see an amazing thing. It's hard to experience love to God with this infinite love. It's not that easy. Tzaddikim, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, he lived with this all the time. There was fiery tzaddikim. You literally saw in them that their fire was ablaze. The Alter Rebbe, when he would start davening, he suddenly would run out of the shul with his stender, and he was like a madman. No. The Talmidim of the Maggid, they couldn't contain themselves. They had energy that was limited. These were tzaddikim that opened their souls up to this quest, to this longing, to this Ein Sof. They felt it. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya talks about it today. He says that it's like the avoid of the Kohanim is limited, but the Levi, it's like till you become cholas ava. He describes it with such descriptions. You become sick with love, and then you reach close on nefesh that your soul is literally expiring. And the Alter Rebbe says everybody's got to try that, but you got to really make sure you got no sins at all to be able to experience that. So to experience chesed on that level, or gevura, tremble on that level, like the Baal Shem Tov would tremble in front of God. Literally, like tremble infinitely. It would shake like a leaf. So much so that next to the Baal Shem Tov, the chairs that were in the room started shaking because they felt the fear. The domain, the inanimate, was able to feel the fear that the Baal Shem Tov felt. That's how powerful that fear was. That he projected it into an object. It's crazy. These were tzaddikim. Us, to have that kind of love on such a deep level, although we all have the potential, because our souls really are, but it needs a lot of digging, and we don't have but the one place that we can feel that more than in anything else is in compassion. if we think about how pathetic and nebach our souls are, and we can bring ourselves to cry, and to cry so deeply that we're literally uncontrollably sobbing for our soul. That's already easier. That's the experience of tshuva. It's mainly the experience of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, where you're supposed to cry. And that crying is very deep. It's very inward. It's like the soul burst open with suddenly you feel that your pain is not coming from your meditation. It's not what you understand. It's much deeper. You feel like your soul itself is like feels severed from God and can't bear the pain on an infinite level. So that's what he's saying. Rachmanis is the key. Yaakov is the key to get into the mountains of darkness, which are much greater than the mountains of light. To step out of the created realm and get into the divine and the innermost of the divine. Look at the words. Ubefrata ikar, and the main program for that, the main pathway to that, is Ayadei Midas Rachmanis, is through the attribute of mercy. Because it says that when God promised Abraham and Isaac, he gave them a land that had boundaries. Gave them the land of Israel with boundaries. But when God spoke to Jacob, he told him no boundaries. He told him, "Uparatzta yama v'kedma tzafayna." You will break open the north, the west, the east, the north, and the south. There's no boundaries for you. Ein sof, b'li mitzar. V'zeu gam kein, and because mercy is through the experience of self-compassion, compassion on the soul, compassion on our distance from God, we can open ourselves up on the highest levels. This is also the meaning of the soul that you have given me. Tahirahi, she's pure. Yossi, willst du copy? No. Using this, but I can use, yeah? There you go. It's on page number 10. Second column. This is the meaning of the soul being pure. The root, when we're rooted in the other side of the river, this is this level of engravement canal, the from the concealed thought. Nikra, this is called Galav Glifa B'tihara Ilah. This is what the Zohar says, that God carving in the supernal purity. That means in the Ein Sof, where there's nothing there but him, but Ein Sof, he carved into the Ein Sof Sfirot, which are Keser. Keser is carvings in the Ein Sof. So when we say our soul is pure, that means our soul, where our soul is nothing more than a carving in God. She's pure. She comes from the supernal purity. It's the same idea of Be'ever Anar Yashua V'Seichem. On the other side of the river, your forefathers lived. But then when the soul descended down, I led her through the entire land of Canaan. Who Inyan? When it says, just like by there, it says God took Abraham and he brought him through the land of Canaan. We speak about that same journey, about our own neshama. Our neshama is first pure in the Ein Sof. But what? Ata berasa, you created it. Ata yetzarta, you brought it down. You brought our soul down into the three lower worlds. Till you breathed her into me. And this means that God took these engraved letters and put us into the written form. God wrote us into the world. First, we're engraved letters, and then he wrote us, inscribed us into the world. We become part of the story of creation, part of the written word. Nimtza yesh beYisrael gam kein beis madreges geval. That's why by the Jewish people there is also, we see now, two levels. Mitzat sharshan, our root, our source. Tahirahi, she's pure. Hem b'chinas oisias chakika. We're rooted in the Ein Sof. Umitzad hishtal shalusan. But because of our evolution, we evolve into the world. We evolve into the world. Lamata b'bchenes brasa yitzarta. We descend into creation, into formation. Nefachta bi until Hashem blows it down into me. Zeu inyan oisius aksav. These are the written letters. Ulahavin inyan beis b'chenes elu b'avodas Hashem. And to understand these two levels in the service of God, what does this mean practically in our service of Hashem? We can serve Hashem from the external self, the written letters. We can serve Hashem from the essential letters, from the engraved letters. There is a type of love, which all comes from understanding. Vadas and knowledge, bigdulas Hashem, when we contemplate God's greatness. That's one level. That's the written level. Like we spoke, you get to know things through your intelligence and you form a bond with them. You get excited about them. But these are external bonds. But the real level of love is not what's produced by the mind. This is the Chabad Rebbe telling you that the main love is not the Chabad. It's deeper than that. You use the Chabad to open yourself up to beyond Chabad, to your Kester of your Nisham. It's beyond the das, it's beyond the knowledge, it's beyond your information intake, and it's beyond your contemplation. Ki anurayim, like we see, take a look. What proved all of this? He's going to say right now, October 7th proved all of this. There are Jews who sit in yeshiva all their life, studying and learning and from and so on like this, and barely they etch out a little love of Hashem. They love them. It's not that they don't love at a certain level. Then you have Jews that are totally non-religious, totally secular, totally removed from anything Jewish, eating pork, doing every sin in the world, but they get a Jewish shake-up and they realize the whole world hates them and the whole world's standing against them and the world is okay with Jews being butchered to death and watching what they watch. And suddenly Jews are so waken up and suddenly thousands of them become Baalei Tshuva overnight, start keeping mitzvot. And so, what? The neshama stirred, the soul stirred. And 1 minute the neshama stirred, because you don't need to have yeshiva and education to love God. You love God because you're a Jew. You have a godly soul. You're a piece of Him from above. Of course you love Him. It's just that it gets covered up with the external, the superficial self, the outside self covers on the deeper self. But when you get shocked, like the Jewish people got shocked a few months ago, it brought out the deeper soul. That's what he's saying. The power of will, the ava, that and love. It's much more than the value of the intelligence and the izboinenus. Shaharei, like we see, afilu kal shebekalim, even that a person who's the lightheaded of the lightheaded, which means someone who didn't take Judaism serious at all. Can in 1 minute become the most devout Jew. He can be willing to give his life up on the sanctification for God's name, to die for the sanctification of God's name. Not from any contemplation. Not from any, he didn't sit and get, okay, teach me now. All these guys didn't go to yeshiva. And one day they want to put on tefillin, they want to daven, they want to sing Mashiach, they want to literally die for another Jew. It's how did it happen suddenly? Like this. Because of these mountains of darkness, because of the real deeper Jew that's really there all along. Nimtza comes out, the essential will that every Jew has to God. It's higher than reason. Of course, when we don't have chas v'shalom, we should never need to have such shakeups. If we want to experience it when life is peace and tranquil. When we want to ourselves bring ourselves, not have the earthquake to make it happen, but to kind of bring ourselves to that place, you have to work with something. You can't just wake up and decide you're there. So you contemplate, you study, you learn, and you hope and you daven that through your learning and my meditation, suddenly you will bore a hole. You will take a bit on your drill and drill holes in your consciousness to your super consciousness. So suddenly that juice of the higher godly juice should pour in and you should feel that love or feel that fear or feel that that essential bond with God. Through the intelligence and the mind. And that's why if you don't contemplate, it's not going to reveal itself unless under severe circumstances, like we mentioned earlier. But nevertheless, the essential root of the desire, even when it comes down through contemplation, it's really above reason. And this is because the soul is really pure, because our soul is really not a creation. Our soul is really God. It's one with Him. This is the love of the son to a father, which is explained elsewhere. Because God is literally our God. This is an essential bond of father to child. What is he talking about suddenly? Wheat? Sages say that a child does not know how to call father until they taste a taste of wheat, grain. When a child grains, the Zohar, that's why we have to eat matzah on Pesach, because through eating the matzah, we can identify God. So what does that mean? Are you using your das? Yeah, but even a child who has an essential bond to their father, how does it come into manifestation and articulation? That they can appreciate that bond. They have to eat wheat and grain, and they have to develop their mind, but then an experience that's beyond their mind can come into their consciousness. So that's the same idea that we're learning now, that we need to use the intel. That's why the matzah, the grain, helps us bring these deeper bond into our consciousness. But it's only a conveyor. It's not the source of it. The mind didn't create it. It's much deeper than the mind. Now you gotta hear the next few lines. I discovered something here. I called Rabbi Mendel Zirkin and I told him this, and he was blown. And I called Aaron Margot, my other son-in-law. I got blown. This is what we're going to learn now is absolutely priceless. But you got to stay 20 more minutes. And this is the meaning of Tul Sifei. Then afterwards is a different story. If in my statutes you will go, what does it mean? God could have said we should keep the mitzvahs. What does he mean you shouldn't? God is saying, with these engravements that I've engraved in you, it's the emotions of Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, of Keter. It's these engravements, these mountains of darkness. Shesham Shoirish Avos. That's where the root of the fathers. If you will walk in them, now how do we access this? How do we access Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? We said through contemplation. But where is the contemplation? So it's amazing. The contemplation is during prayer, because our siddur, our liturgy of our prayer book, is made up of a combination of Avram's soul, Isaac's soul, and Yaakov's soul. The words themselves are words of Avram's neshama, because Avram is kindness. There are words in prayer that are words of kindness, words of love. The words of prayer that Isaac brought into the prayer. They're words of awe and divine awe and fear on a godly level. There are words of prayer that evoke compassion. Like you see, Mizmar Shech Hanukkah Sabayis, my betz abedami, what are you going to have for my blood when I go down the Yoitcha Afar? You see, like your words, Ata Hashem lo'isichla rachamecha, do not hold back your mercy from me, your compassion. Avinu avarachamon hamerachim rachim aleinu. And what we're supposed to really, when we pray and we really focus on the words and we say, God, all we say is, melt me into the prayer book. And allow the words to really, because what happens, we read quickly, we're busy, we're rushing. But if we sit and we contemplate a little bit and just hold on to these words and let them sit on your heart a little bit. They're made up of these words, and they open up the neshama into this. They help the soul rise back up into its original place. They pull the soul into this essential into this essential godliness. Al Kain, and therefore, B'yacholtam, Shem Shoyre Sha'avos, the Chagas of Keser. This is the root of the fathers, which is the root of the forefathers. Sorry, Al Kain B'yacholtam. That's why it's these levels, Lidrois Tzainam. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they can shepherd their flock. Who are their flock? All the souls. Ulahaviyam, and Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov have the ability to bring us L'makar zeh hanikra chakikos, to bring us to the level of Keter, to bring us to a love of God that transcends intelligence, to bring us into our essential bond with Hashem. Va'az, and if when that will happen, telechu, you will go. B'pchenes mahalech, you will become a goer, bilti shir v'gvul. Then you will, the divinity of your soul will open up, and you'll be able to move infinitely. Now, when will this happen? So there's two pieces over here I want you to hear. Next, but my main it was like the last paragraph here. When I say the last, I mean we're coming to it right now. Meaning 1, 2, 3. Like it says, when will this happen? When will this when is the time that this true infinity is going to open up in each and every one of us? It's Mashiach who's going to unlock our soul to this level. The power is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but Mashiach is really this level. Like it says regarding Mashiach, Hine Yaskil Avdi, my servant will be Yaskil, will be so intelligent and so wise. And it says Yorim V'gava, and then it says V'gava Ma'od, he will be very high. That means that his soul, Mashiach's consciousness, is going to be Keter consciousness. He's going to live in the world of Keser. Unlike Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, whose experience, even though their root was from the other side of the river, but their conscious lives was Atzilus energy, not Keser. Mashiach, his entire consciousness is on this level of engraved letters, the engravement in the Ein Sof. And because he's the leader of the generation, he will open up the Jewish people to this level of Mesiras Nefesh. The truth is that this is Chassidus. Chassidus is the beginning of this. The Alter Rebbe says that if we're not davening like a madman, if you're not experiencing this mad love during davening, you're not davening. Your soul is not, you're not experiencing the real God. You're in a state of galus, you're not in a state of geula. The Alter Rebbe says that's Mashiach. And Chassidus was always supposed to bring the person already into that Mashiach reign. But within Chassidus itself, it's Mashiach Tzidkenu that will activate this on the highest level. Because Chassidus is all the preparation leading into the grand finale, which is Mashiach. Upirish ma'od, and what does it mean, ma'od? Very much, beligvul, without an end. Hainu b'chinas ein sof, in a limitless manner. V'zau agilu yeh la'asad lavai. This is going to be in the future. V'hainu al yedei v'hafta b'chomeda. But that doesn't mean that what? That we can't experience it today. Quite on the contrary. The reason we're going to experience it as a natural experience when Mashiach comes, we're going to wake up in the morning pumping like crazy. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves with all this excessive energy. The reason we're going to experience it then is because we've opened up now our souls. In other words, now too we're supposed to drill. Now we can experience it in a minuscule way, but we're supposed to at least make small little drill little holes in our conscious self to our superconscious. But when Mashiach will come, the barrier will go away between our godly side and our human side, and all of our godliness will come down and manifest into our consciousness. When we do this daily, we're preparing ourselves and conditioning ourselves for this intense experience when Mashiach comes. But listen to these words, Gewalt. And every person, now the Alter Rebbe says like this, since whether you chose it or not, whether you want to or you don't want to be a chassid, whether you want to be a madman or you don't want to be a madman, if you're thinking of that this is the way for you or you want to stay a cool, collected human being, you should know from today till tomorrow's vetech nicht helfen. It's not going to help you because every soul is going to have to come back to its source in Kesser. That means everybody's going to become a crazy soul. You're going to become mad in your Yiddish. You're going to become insanely Jewish, insanely godly, whether you like it or not. There's no escaping, because that's the destiny of every soul. That's where you come from. That's where you've been excavated from. So you're going to try to hold on to your rigidity and your coolness and all that. It's not going to last. Now, if you're holding on too tight on it, you know what? So it's not going to happen in this incarnation. It's going to happen in the next incarnation. Eventually, everybody's going to reach this level. But what happens the last generation before Mashiach comes? There's no more escape. There's no more incarnations. He says the last generation is forced into this level of connection. You can delay it. See, there were people who chose to open their souls up in earlier generations, and therefore their connection to God reached its fullest. Those who decided not to do it came down another generation, another incarnation. And then there are those, but eventually we get to the generation of Mashiach. Lo yidach mimenu nidach mimenu, from him no one will be cast away. From him. Him meaning from this infinite attachment. V'chol echad muchrach. Everybody is absolutely compelled to come to their true root and their source in this level of chagas, chesed gevur teferes, of erech anpin, of the crown. Hanikra bechuosei. You must get back to your engraved self. Why? Ki lo yidach mimenu nidach. No one from him. Mimenu mamish. Who's the who? Who's the menu from him? From Hashem's very essence. If you didn't do it in this world, you're going to come down in a Gilgal in another generation. And specifically, in the generation of King Mashiach, which is us, the entire, see, till now it was individual people who chose to do this can go there, tzaddikim. But when Mashiach will come, the entire ensemble of Jewish souls will rise into this experience. B'pchinas ma'od, everybody will rise into this level of engraved Judaism, engraved oneness, a level of love to God that transcends reason. I mentioned to you earlier, because from when Mashiach, in the days of Mashiach, until the resurrection of the dead, we're still going to continue doing the service through practical mitzvahs. But we're going to do those mitzvahs the way they were intended that we should do them. How did God intend us to do the mitzvahs? Like an engraved letter, not like a written letter. It could be that throughout all of history, we've been doing them like written letters. When Mashiach comes, we will uncover the engraved level. And at least from that time, when will there be the ultimate satisfaction from our mitzvahs? The mitzvahs that we will do after Mashiach is already revealed until the resurrection. And then that's the reason. Then it will be Gava Ma'oid. Mashiach will be very high, and he will bring us into that heights. Crown Heights. That's why the Rebbe lives in Crown Heights, because this is bringing up to the crown height. Anybody that learns a little Hasidus, especially if you learn the cool stuff, you can see God's graffiti everywhere. If you don't see it, it's like Empire, Crown Heights, Kingston Avenue. Like, come on, who could have thought this up? It's like out of all places. Kesser Elyon, every Crown Street, one after another. Union, I mean. Everything. Kedma, these level is also called Kedma. Eastern Parkways, Kedma. It's unbelievable. This is where Mashiach is taking the Jewish people into the Orein Seif. Bechuosei mamish, into the Teleichum. Yeah, but to translate that into literal, the Rebbe did it already. When the Rebbe sent us out to say to a Yid, are you Jewish? Tefillin. What is the Rebbe doing? He's bypassing the whole seichel. He says, you're Jewish, put on tefillin. Because this is who you are. Stop with the Baba Maisa. Stop telling me stories that you're not, you don't want, you don't understand. It doesn't make a difference. You're Jewish, tefillin. The Rebbe started peeling away already, all these externalities. Stop already. Because that's the job, to uncover this essential bond. But watch this. Here's a big chiddush. This is the piece I wanted to share with you. Now the Midrash tells us that when God says, "If in my statues you go," the Midrash says that God gets on his knees and he's begging us. Loshen tachanunim, Hashem is begging. He says, "Please." The means it's pleading. God is pleading with each and every one of us. Bechuosei telech. Go in my ways. So it doesn't mean just keep mitzvahs. God is pleading with us that we should do the mitzvahs like this. But you have no idea where I'm going with this. Now, I promise you. There's something so cool over here. Okay. God is begging us. What's the intention? Hear these words very clearly. The ensemble of Israel should not go b'pchinas hilachanal. Don't take this journey. Ki'im begimel chakika salalu. If you're going to take this journey into your infinity, only do it through these three chakikos. Only do it through Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Through Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, which is in prayer. Activate it through prayer. Activate it through the Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Shehem Shirish Gimel Avos, which are the root of the three fathers. Shem Shirish Gimel Midas Akdoshos. These are the three midos. Ava v'yira v'rachmanis, love, fear, and mercy. V'shara midos, mistafemem, and all the other midos. Netzach, anafa chesed, shu'ava, v'chein kol ha-mitzvahs. In other words, use Torah and mitzvahs to open yourself up to your spiritual source. They come from these kavim, and therefore use only Torah and mitzvahs. That's why Yiddishkeit is divided into Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim, the three pillars the world stands, because God says, these are the waves I carved out for you to come back to your essential soul. But this is the main line that I was so blown away with. Don't choose a different path. Zula, some other than this klal at all. These are the ways I engraved on you to go on this journey. But don't go in any other ways. I'm reading this. I'm thinking, what does he mean? Any other ways? Anybody have another way how to get to their Or Ein Sof? Is there any other way to do it? It's not talking about God is saying, keep my mitzvahs and don't sin. Or keep my mitzvahs and don't become obsessed with materialism. We're talking about, I want you telechu. I want you to get to your infinity. So I opened up a path for you. But I'm begging you, don't go into your infinity through another path. Go only through this way. So what does that mean? What is the other path? It would seem like there is another path. And it's interesting. This mimer is an explanation on the earlier Meidah. In the other mimer, in the earlier mimer, he uses even precious word. He says, God is saying, Halavai, I wish this should be enough for you to get there. Sheyaspiku, that this should suffice. That my Torah and mitzvahs you should realize that there is everything you need in it. And I'm thinking, what can this mean? So today's days, you have so many people who so badly want to open their souls up to their deepest experiences, their deepest souls. And they think they need to do it through tripping out, through ayahuasca and different types of experiences. It's going into the total religious community also. And you see from the mimer that God's that it's not fake. That through these alternative methods, you could get there. The mimer is not saying you can't. The mimer is giving legitimacy that there are other ways. Because when you take these things, they kind of pick you out of the limitations of the constrictions of your physical, and they take you into a higher realm of your soul. And how high you can go depending on how far. And people were begging me to try to take these guys. They know you teach so much Chassidus. If you will do it, you'll finally really feel what it is. Everything you've been teaching, you can experience. You know how many times people were begging me, and I said, I cannot do this until I get explicit permission from the Rebbe or from authority like that. I'm not going to do this because they didn't. This is not what Chassidus taught, and I'm not going there. And people were begging me, you're rabbi, you're going to do it. I once did a breathing session, and I got a little somewhere. So, but other than that, I didn't. And I never found. I was wondering, what does Chassidus say? Where is there a source that deals with it. And I found it for the first time in this time. And this is what God is pleading with us. Please know that you can do it in Torah mitzvahs itself. You don't have to find another way to get there. That's not that. Now, we're living in a difficult generation. And it's interesting. It's our generation that's meant to get there. So it's precisely, this I'm actually just hopping right now. You know, the reason why people are so driven is because right now we feel we need to get there. Because it's a generation that's going to be uplifted. A generation of Mashiach is meant to experience it. You can say that the earlier generations, because there was a purer air, they were able to get there. Now we can't. But I think it's deeper. No, they didn't either get there. Besides a few tzaddikim. But now people really want it because we're meant to experience it. But Hashem is begging us. And there's a lot of rabbis today, especially those who are teaching mysticism, who are kind of being seduced into this and are going with it because the people want it. And they're doing all kinds of meditation processes and going along with these things. And it's an easy. And I think sometimes if I would do this in Mayan, forget about it. I would have 10,000 people here. We would be doing trip. We would be going. But God is in Bechuosei. The Eibishter is saying, now it doesn't mean it's a cop-out not to do anything. It means to learn and to study and to actually start davening. That I should start doing, and we should all start doing it. And know that in our generation, it's given to us the ability to be able to daven this way and to discover this energy. That was the gem that I found that I thought was like really amazing. I've never seen such a lashon in a maimer that the Abers, and I remember seeing this years ago, and I remember thinking, what does this mean? God is begging, if you're gonna go on a journey, if you're gonna trip out on my Torah and mitzvahs, don't trip out. But this is the story. So it's tempting to go the easy route because all you need to do is whatever. I don't even know what you do. You smoke something, you do something, whatever it is that you're doing that takes you into that state. You take the medicine, as they call it, whatever it is. But that's what he's saying. God is saying you can actually take a journey with the mitzvahs. What do you think all the tzaddikim did? They went on these journeys, but they did it. They found it in the mitzvahs, in their prayers. That's the yes, in its pure form, in its holy form, in its godly form. Okay, I there's only a little small piece. I'm going to finish it, but I'm dismissing those who want to be dismissed. I just felt that this part I had to share, but I am going to finish the discourse now. Okay, that's mitzvosei tishmeru. And what does it continue? And what does it say? It's early today still. Okay. Then it says, in my mitzvahs you should observe. Now the word mitzvotai tishmaru also means shmira means observe. Shmira also means to watch something. Guard. A guard is called a shomer. So my mitzvahs you should guard. Simply can mean you guard the mitzvot, you guard the commandment. But it also means from the word you're guarding something. So what does that mean? Here's a little bit of a problem. Once upon a time, before we even became a soul, we were once one with the Ein Sof. We were engravings in the Ein Sof. That is so once upon a time. That is so far away. How in the world do we take a journey so far and so deep? How do we reach? How do we get? I believe that the people that do take trips through the various different methods, they get a little higher than the bodies. They're not getting into these levels. They're going past the constriction. And I'm sure some go higher, some go lower. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't do it myself. I don't know where they go. But definitely they're going past. But here we're talking about going all the way into Telechu, into infinity. How do you do that? The answer is you observe the mitzvahs. And hear this amazing thing. You see, every mitzvah is a container, is a cup. It's a cup that holds wine. What's the wine? The wine is the royal wine. The pure godly Ein Sof light flows in the mitzvahs, but the mitzvahs are a glass that can hold it. So when we draw down godliness through our actions, the Ein Sof is no more a long distance call. He's no more infinitely far away above all worlds. He's a local call. He's in your house. Why? Because the mitzvah that you did brought the Ein Sof down. And what does that do? Since the Ein Sof is so close, it enables us to trigger the part of our essence of our soul that, it's like a magnet. A magnet pulls the other magnet. When the soul, even though it has descended through journeys, it's gone such a far distance and evolved and metamorphosized so much, but when it comes very close to its original, that reawakens the soul. And that's why only when we do the mitzvot can we expect to experience these experiences in prayer. If we're messing up with mitzvah observance, then we have nothing to hold the light. Then the Ein Sof is really very, very, very far from our experience. So you can't do the Bechuosei Telechu. You can't get to your engraved self, which is the walking, the Ein Sof walk. You can't go on that Ein Sof journey unless ves mitzvosei tishmeiru, you guard the light. You need to guard it in the right vessels. That's the next piece. Ves mitzvosei tishmeiru pidish hashmira, the guarding, kadesh yaskayim ahiluch b'chol moedecha, in order that it should be fortified. This hiluch, this walking, b'chol moedecha, with all your might, b'tefillah, in prayer, hu al yedei mitzvahs. It's through the commandments. These are so many different types of vessels. In other words, because we know that different types of mitzvahs, not all the same, because the vessels that contain godliness are different. Because why? We said before, there's Avram, there's Yitzchak, and there's Yaakov. These carvings are not all the same. So the mitzvahs also have to represent the various elements of those carvings. These are variations of vessels, and which contain the Ein Sof, the infinite light. The words Kelim Mekalim Shonim is a borrowed verse from the writings of Esther, from the Megillah, from the Purim story. It says over there that Achashverosh, the king, made a big party, king of Persia, and he had millions of vessels. He had so many vessels. Not millions. He had like so many kelim, variants of different types of cups and glasses. But it's now saying that, now we know that Achashverosh is also a metaphor for God. So the king, God, flows into the vessels. Pidish al derech mashal hayayin, just like v'zeu yayin malchus rav ki yad hamelech. In the Megillah, it also says that the royal wines, there was plenty of royal wine like the king can afford. Pidish, what does it mean? Al derech mashal hayayin, just like there is wine. She'i after lekabloi beloy kli, you can't hold the wine without a vessel. V'kach al derech mashal, and the same is by the analogy. Another example, and they give, first of all, wine. Wine, you can have the best wine. If you don't have a cup to receive, you're not getting. You need a cup. You need a glass. The other one, light, fire, light. You can only hold the light if you have a wick. You have to have a vessel. The wick serves as the vessel, the lamp, that the flame can catch on. The flame can't catch on, so you have the flame is the energy, and it can't catch on without a wick. So we need vessels. That's the point. So in order to hold the Ein Sof light down so that it can inspire us, we need that. And the same is also the flame that illuminates on or burns on a wick. And once the wick burns out, gone is the flame. Is a third example. The soul that enlivens the body. The soul is energy, the body is container. Like the power. So when we take the particular powers of the soul, like the power of vision, ba'ayin that registers in the eye, the koyach hashmiya and the power of audio, the power of hearing, ba'oizen in the ear, shebekil kol hakli al yedei makkah, when the vessel gets ruined through a injury, God forbid someone got an eye injury or an injury in their hearing or eardrums or something like that. Or kedaima, what happens? If there's no vessel, you can't see anymore. Mistalik oir hariya. So even though the vision is really a soul power, but if there's no vessel, it can't manifest. Mistalik oir hariya, the ability of sight departs me'ayin from the eye. The hashmiya and the audio and the hearing goes away me'oizen from the ear. Al derech mashal, by way of analogy. Say so too will understand the 248 positive commandments. So just like we need to have vessels to be able to hold our soul down, same to godliness, he's the soul of all of existence, to bring the Ein Sof down. God has 200, just like we have 248 limbs, and each one manifests a different power of the soul, so too the 248 limbs of God are the mitzvot. So when we do the mitzvah, when we wear the tefillin for a Jewish man, when we give the tzedakah for every person, right? When we keep the Shabbat or do all the mitzvot, whatever they are, we're creating the vessels to hold the godly light down. So here he gives down here it's our physical vessels, but these physical vessels are really just physical manifestations of the vessels of Atzilut. Remember, the Atzilus are the first vessels that in which the light of Keser has to flow down into them. It's to go first in Atzilus. So these are the vessels. These are the Kalim of the Ze'er Anpin, to receive the flow of light, Mipchenas Keser from the crown. Keser is Gematria 620. So these are the 620 pillars of light that are from Keser and go down into Atzilus. Shem Taryag Mitzvah. Now, how do they translate down here? They translate as the 613 commandments, Sheva Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan, and the 7 rabbinic. So it's really serious. What's going on over here is like this: 248 limbs to receive the light of Keter. So altogether, there's a 620 mitzvot. 613 plus the 7 rabbinic make it 620, which they are the light of Keser. The light of Keser. But we need the vessels for it that hold it. For it to come into vessels. The Ivarim and limbs, the Ze'er Anpin of the Ze'er Anpin. And from the Ze'er Anpin, that's in Atzilus, in the first world. And from there, it should manifest and come down and drew down into Bria Tzir Nasi, into creation. And without the vessels, the light would depart. As it says by Elisha with the woman, he told her when he was stayed by this woman, and she said that Shunamis, she said that she came to cry, she doesn't have any way, a livelihood, she needs to feed her children, and he told her to go take oil, borrow oil, and pour it into the vessels, and the miracle happened, and the oil kept on flowing, more and more oil, and then the oil became very expensive. But he told her to go get a lot of vessels. And then she tells her son, bring the vessels, and the miracle happens, the oil is pouring. And then she tells her son, bring a vessel, and there was no more containers. And that's when the oil stopped. So you see from here, the flow of energy, the blessing only flows when there is a vessel to receive it. Make the vessels. Uksiv einoid kelly, there's no more vessel, v'yamid hashamen, and the oil stopped. V'zeu, and this is also the meaning of v'yayin malchus, the royal wine. That's the energy, the wine. Hu ha'or shemeir, this is the light that's shining. Rav, it's a lot, because we're talking about the Ein Sof. This is Ein Sof. It's coming from Keser. Kiyad HaMelech. Which hand is this? It says the hand of the king. Which hand? Remember we said before the king has 3 hands, and this is the 3 hands of Keser. This is the great arm. Chesed Erech. This is the kindness of Erech Anpin, of the Keter. It's infinite. Now, what does it do? So good. So you have the wine. You have vessels. What happens when you drink some wine from that vessel? What does wine do? Wine draws out the secrets. Nichnas yayin yotze soid. Yayin is the numeric value of yayin is 70. The numeric value of the word sod is secret is also 70. Wine, because wine is a secret, because where does wine come from? Wine comes from a grape. You have to squeeze the grapes to get the wine. So wine has alcohol. What does it do to the person? It pulls out the secrets. Usually when a person is drunk, they speak what they shouldn't say. Then they feel embarrassed. Why did I say this? Because they have an open mouth. But on a deeper level, the secret of the soul. What's the secret of the soul? The divinity of the soul. The essence of the soul. That's the secret. How do you get it out? You drink the wine. But the wine comes through the doing of the mitzvahs. That's the wine. You drink it. You apply it to the soul. These are the ways you get your wine. You don't need, as I spoke earlier, you don't need to take any kind of ulterior other things to do it. You got the mitzvahs. You got everything to get high. Everything to get you high on spirituality, to get you on and through the wine going in Zeba Adam into the person. The secret comes out. The Ava Mesuteres, and the deep love, your infinite love for God will come pouring forth. That's rooted in the forefathers. Which they're rooted on the other side of the river canal. The wine will take you to the other side of the river. But in order to have that, you have to have variations of vessels. The Torah mitzvahs, of Torah and mitzvahs. You have to study Torah every day. You have to do mitzvot every day. Through this, you get the royal wine. That it should be a lot, like the hand of the king, like the king can afford. And this is the meaning. You will guard it through the mitzvahs. Piddish mitzvah. What is mitzvah? The mitzvah forges a bond, because mitzvah is God's will. So when you do the mitzvah, you make the connection between God and you, and God flows into you. When the light is drawn into a vessel, then God is in a state of connection. And He's together with us. But when you don't do the mitzvah, then God is in the abstract. He is infinitely removed. He's above. Nikra Chakika. Then God is engraved in Himself, and He's not flowing down to us. So Chukoisai Telechu, where you want to go is into this mysterious, very, very deep place. But in order to go into the state of Chakika, you need a mitzvosai tishmeiru. You need to create the bond with that very, very far, infinite high level. You have to connect it to you down here. Through the mitzvah, which causes the bond, and the mitzvah is the vessel that draws it down. And thereby, once this Ein Sof comes down close to you, it can pull out your love as well and connect you into that space. That's the idea. Connect us into that place. So prayer is the experience of Bechuosei Telechu. B'chinas Ava v'Yira, through the love and the fear. Ava is the Abraham that's in prayer. Yira, the fear, is the Isaac that's in prayer. This Oidedis Rachamim, and the evoking of mercy. Shehem Aliyos, which through prayer, these are all elevations. Ad B'chinas Chakika Al Yaina. They elevate the soul all the way up to the supernal engravement. Oiros the Keser. They lift the soul up to the lights of Keter. But this can only happen through observing the mitzvahs. They are the vessels to the drawing forth and the revelation of these lights on Niskalel, Shal Yadei Akeli, through the vessel, Yiskaya Ma'or. That's how the light will be able to be substantiated. That means that we constantly need to have moments of elevation, moments of transcendence, moments of prayer, but we also have to draw God down in here through these vessels, through these containers. We race forward and we draw godliness down. And here's the thing, the mitzvahs that you do to yesterday will empower your prayer of tomorrow. The prayer of tomorrow, your prayer will juice your mitzvahs. Each one affects the other. Because when you're up there, you connect to that place. Then when you're doing the mitzvah, you have far more energy pumping from the Ein Sof going down into the mitzvah. But then the next day, the mitzvahs of yesterday guarded that light to stimulate the soul into prayer. So it's a continuous, one is supporting the other. And through this, what's going to happen if you will do this? So God says, if you go in my statutes and my mitzvahs you observe, what's going to happen next? The earth will give forth her yavula, her produce. The earth will give what she can give. So what does that mean? When we serve God like this, we will then bring about the purpose of creation, because we will elevate all the sparks of holiness. The Shekhinah, the Malchut, which is the root of all of our souls, will be able to produce. Sheyiten Yavula, that means the earth will grow its produce. What's that? Balasman, that's the raising of the feminine waters from each and every one. Our love to God is our feminine waters. It's our produce. And together, the Shekhinah brings up towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, towards the Ein Sof, the sparks of holiness, was the reason why we came down to begin with, as we said earlier. Why did we leave? To elevate these sparks. And then that's the produce, the Reish Peches Netzutzen of the 288 sparks. The Achakach, and what's going to happen after that? Once the earth will give forth all these sparks of holiness that it elevated, when we will serve God in this way, the trees will give their fruit. The Eitz HaSada, the trees of the field, Yitain Pirya will give their fruit. What does that mean? The earth is us. The trees, that's God. The Shekhinah is the earth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the tree. And what does that mean? Through our raising of feminine waters, God will respond. It's like an intimacy, a man and a woman. And what are the fruits? Gavald. The fruits are the new souls that are going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. These are the supersonic souls. These are the souls that are like going to complete. These are the souls of the future. Well, who are they? These are the lights of Keser revealed in this world. Our souls come from Keser, but they've been involved and they become mitigated. These souls are going to come down in their pure godly form. And that's the fruits that are going to reveal them from the deepest, from the Ein Sof, higher and higher. And we will then have, and remember we learned in an earlier discourse that our souls will plug into these souls that will come down, those new souls, and they will take us to who knows where. The tree of the field will give its fruit. That's the drawing down of masculine waters. It's like in an intimacy between a man and a woman. The woman rises the feminine waters, the man then responds. And that creates a birth. This is the revelation of the Or Ein Sof. God will be completely revealed, not only in the soul, will be revealed in the world. That God will walk amongst us. How will He walk amongst us? The tree of life. It's the tree of life. We will finally be out of the tree of knowledge. We will be in the tree of life. From there will come superior souls. These souls are called the fruits of the tzaddik of the tree of life. Ayin, he says on the bottom of Orah 54, Ayin Bezoar Chelik Aleph Bereshis Daf Lamed Zayin Seif Av Beis Ayin Mashin is Barba Makam Achra Pasik Ben Peres Yosef Ayin Mashin is Barba Dal Pasik Shab Seisei Tishmoiru Me'in Yeridus Haneshama Me'Makoiru Me'Machshav Yelol L'Slabish Begufim. It's explained in the other Maimah that the soul comes down from the supernal thought to being clothed in bodies. It's a descent But for the sake of an ascent, lamai, above. I'm actually Baba did a mask with Santi Katkoid, being a Tahara, maybe de Kedusha. The Saif did a mask, Lelamas, being a Masam Lamatseam. I'm in a Chodas Alaluchas, Berabis, Mishpatim, Kisisa, Pekude, Bagamara, Bezoyar, Chelik Beis, Da Pedal, Gimel, Vegadal, Beis, Look at a million sources. And then Vitzivisi, the last one. And then God says, I will Vitzivisi es berchasi, I will command my blessing. It's the very strange thing, because this verse, Vitzivisi es berchasi, I will command my blessing, is not in this week's parsha. It's in Parshas Bahar. It's in last week's parsha. God says, if you're going to wonder what are you going to eat, I will command my blessing. But the Alter Rebbe kind of puts it in over here as if it would be a continuation to Bechuosei. I don't know. But if the Alter Rebbe said it over here, it belongs here, whatever that means. It says, I will command my blessing. So what does that mean? That's referring to Birkas HaMitzvahs. That's in addition to the mitzvahs, there is the blessing that we say when we do a mitzvah. And that's the meaning, Vitzivisi, which is the mitzvahs, es birkasi. I will give a bracha for the mitzvah. So what does that mean? What does that do? Ki mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. What did we say earlier? The mitzvot are the vessels, which bring the light. But if you're doing mitzvahs without any intent, you're just doing them without any godly feeling to them, then is the wine really pouring in these mitzvahs? So when we say a blessing before the mitzvah, it helps us tune in to the flow of godliness. Baruch atah Hashem means, let you, the infinite one, flow into my mitzvah. So that's what the sages mean. They say mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. The mitzvah needs intention. The intention is fulfilled through the blessing of the mitzvah. Similar to what the prayer is. Prayer is that you want the Ein Sof. You're yearning for the Ein Sof. But prayer you do in the beginning of the day. Now, during the day, when you do a mitzvah, you say a blessing. It's almost like you're praying again when you're saying the blessing. And what is that doing? So then the blessing empowers the mitzvah, and then the mitzvahs contain the light. As we said earlier, they empower the prayer. They'll enable you the next day to fire up your prayer again. So each one flows into the other. You have to intend in the mitzvah to draw the light. And the general blessing and intention is through prayer. Shall call yom, which you do every day. But in a small little pieces of prayer, we have the blessings of the mitzvahs. So they're little nuggets of prayer to help us remember what it's all about. And this is the Bechuosei. That's the tefillah. You will observe my mitzvahs. And in a more specific way, this is also the blessing of the mitzvahs, which help spiritualize the mitzvahs, godlessize the mitzvahs. They shouldn't just be a mitzvah, they should be a mitzvah with the intention and with the awareness that it is God's will that we're doing, and we're engaged in a divine act, and divinity is flowing now, and we're able to contain it, take it in, and live with it, and hopefully release its infinite potency into our prayer the next day, so that we should be able to rise into our Bechuosei, into our engraved state, and be in this infinite love bond with God. Suffice it to say, we'll leave it over here. And I can't wait for Mashiach, when we're actually going to begin experiencing all of this without the hard work. It's just going to be the natural state. That's right. Thank you all for joining. I want to thank all the YouTubers who did participate in I noticed some of your names that I always see you listening and participated in our campaign. Thank you. For those who haven't yet, the campaign is still open till Monday, even though it's not the active campaign, but it's still open, and you can still donate towards this to help fund this beautiful center and all that we do. Thank you all. May God bless you, and may we see Mashiach.